Chapter 13. The Subtunnels. They came early. Not 8 hours, not 5. 3. 3 hours after the assembly, while half the combat teams were still moving into position and the deep shelters were still loading civilians, the perimeter sensors lit up like a string of firecrackers going off in sequence. Ping, 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 6 signatures, moving fast, moving together, and converging on Null City from the upper tunnels, with a speed and coordination that the sweepers had never managed, because the sweepers were storms. And storms don't strategize. Sentinels do. I was in the training chamber when the alarm hit, not the sweeper howl, a different sound. 3 sharp tones, ascending. A null-built alarm, mechanical and analog, triggered by a physical tripwire somewhere in the perimeter network. It meant, they're inside our range, move now. The door banged open, Kale, goggles down, a weapon in his hand, something I hadn't seen before. A long, narrow rod of fused metal and circuitry about the length of his forearm, crackling at the tip with a sharp blue-white light. A disruptor, he'd called it once, the only offensive tool the Nulls had that could slow a Sentinel down. Not destroy, slow. Buy you seconds. In the syntax, seconds were currency. They adapted, he said. No preamble, no context needed. Came through the eastern tunnels, the ones the sweepers ate. There's nothing there. No walls, no infrastructure, no sensors. Just blank space. They use the absence as a highway. The sweepers weren't just searching for me, I said. The realization hit like cold water. They were clearing a path. Now you're thinking like a Null. Move. Null City was transforming. The evacuation I'd seen after the sweepers, the lights going out, the platforms retracting, the city folding into itself, was happening again, but faster, harder, less orderly. The sweepers were a known threat with a known pattern. The Sentinels were something else, something that thought. People poured through the walkways and down the spiralling stairs toward the deep shelters. Parents carried children. The elderly were guided by younger Nulls, with steady hands and grim faces. The woman with the copper wire hair, I still didn't know her name, was directing traffic at a junction, her voice cutting through the chaos with the practiced authority of someone who'd done this before and expected to do it again, assuming she survived. Kale grabbed my arm and pulled me in the opposite direction, not down toward the shelters, sideways, through a narrow passage I hadn't used before, behind the refectory, into a section of the mid-level that was mostly storage, crates of salvaged components, racks of preserved data shards, coils of cable waiting to be repurposed. Why aren't we going to the shelters? I asked. Because the shelters are for people the Sentinels aren't looking for. You're the one they want. If you go to the shelters, you bring them to 300 civilians. He was right. Of course he was right. The Sentinels were here for the root code. For me. Wherever I went, they'd follow. And wherever they followed, people would get hurt. So where are we going? The subtunnels, below Null City, below the deep levels, old infrastructure, pre-luster, pre-pulse, the original network's maintenance corridors. Nobody uses them because they're unstable. The data architecture down there is degraded, corrupted, fragmented, full of traps, but that instability cuts both ways. The Sentinels are digital constructs. Corrupted data disrupts their code the same way it disrupts everything else. If we can draw them into the subtunnels, the environment itself becomes a weapon. And if it disrupts us, we're biological, mostly. The corruption affects digital objects and people with active null abilities, which means you need to keep your de-resolution field locked down tight. If you flare in the subtunnels, you won't just unwrite what you're aiming at. The corrupted data will amplify the field, scatter it, turn a focused beam into a bomb that takes out the tunnel walls, the ceiling, and anyone standing within 50 meters. So run into the most dangerous part of the syntax, don't use my only weapon, and hope the environment kills the things chasing me before it kills me. Welcome to Tactical Planning, Zero. It's mostly bad options ranked by how bad. We descended, past the deep levels, past the water tanks, past the section where the sweepers had eaten the infrastructure clean, leaving smooth walls of compressed nothing that reflected our headlamps. Cale's amber goggles doubled as lights, and he'd given me a small bioluminescent globe that pulsed in my palm like a captive star. The subtunnels began where the architecture changed. It was like crossing a border. One step, the walls were the familiar server tower construction of the syntax, old, corroded, but structured, built with intent. The next step, the intent was gone. The walls became something organic and chaotic, layers of ancient hardware, fused with mineral deposits, data cables petrified into stone, circuit boards compressed by geological pressure into strata of silicon and copper that glittered in the bioluminescent light like veins of ore in a mine shaft. The ground was treacherous, not just uneven, active. Patches of the floor glowed with the telltale shimmer of corrupted data pools, their surfaces rippling like water disturbed by an invisible wind. Memory pools, but worse. Cale had warned me about these. Corrupted memory pools didn't just show you someone else's deleted files, they showed you broken files, fragmented data, reassembled wrong, playing back images and sounds and sensations that had been scrambled by decades of degradation into something that resembled memory, the way a fever dream resembles Tuesday. Stay on the dark patches, Cale said. Dark means inert. Anything that glows. Avoid. Anything that moves. Run. What moves down here? Corrupted subroutines, the original network's maintenance programs, degraded over decades into autonomous fragments. They're not intelligent, they're barely functional, but they're territorial, and they react to digital signatures like antibodies react to infection. He paused at a junction. 3 tunnels. The left one was dark and stable. The centre one shimmered with intermittent light. The right one was, I looked closer, breathing. The walls expanding and contracting in a slow rhythmic pulse, the petrified data cables flexing like the ribs of some vast, sleeping creature. Cale took the centre tunnel. Wouldn't the dark one be safer, I whispered. Safer for us. Also safer for the Sentinels. We want the terrain to fight for us, not against us. The corrupted zones slow them down, makes their code stutter, gives us distance. We moved, fast but careful. The tunnel was narrow enough that my shoulders brushed both walls, and the intermittent shimmer cast everything in a flickering stroboscopic light that made the petrified hardware seem to move at the edges of my vision. Shapes that weren't there, faces in the mineral deposits, patterns in the silicon strata that looked, for a heart-stopping instant, like the scrolling code of a pulse display before resolving back into geology. The subtunnels played tricks. That was the corruption's signature. Not pain, not violence, but distortion. Reality slipping sideways, edges blurring, the past bleeding through the present in fragments too broken to mean anything, but too vivid to ignore. I heard music, faint, the same acoustic instrument from Null City, the wandering, imperfect melody, except down here it was wrong, played backward, or sideways, the notes arriving in an order that almost made sense but didn't, like a sentence with all the right words in all the wrong places. Ignore it, Cale said. The corruption plays echoes, sounds from the upper syntax, fragmented and looped. It's not real. It sounds real. Everything down here sounds real. That's the trap. We ran. 5 minutes, 10. The tunnel branched and branched again, and Cale navigated without hesitation, choosing paths by some internal map I couldn't access. Experience, maybe, or instinct, or the specific knowledge of someone who'd spent years learning the subtunnel's moods, the way a sailor learns weather. Then he stopped. I almost crashed into him. His hand came up, flat, rigid, the universal signal for silence. I froze. The bioluminescent globe in my palm pulsed. The tunnel stretched ahead, flickering. Listen, Cale breathed. I listened, past the corrupted music, past the hum, past my own heartbeat, which was doing something ambitious and unsustainable in my chest. Footsteps, not ours. Not the heavy, crunching tread of Null boots on petrified hardware. These were different, light, precise, evenly spaced, the sound of feet that didn't need to feel the ground, because they weren't really touching it. Feet that simulated contact with a surface they were technically above, hovering at the code level, interacting with the physical environment as a matter of performance rather than physics. And they were behind us. How? I whispered. We had a head start. We took the corrupted paths. They split up. Cale's voice was barely audible. He was looking at the tunnel walls, reading something in the shimmer that I couldn't see. 2 behind us, probably 2 on parallel paths flanking, and 2 somewhere ahead, cutting off the exit. He closed his eyes, opened them. The amber glow of his goggles caught the corruption light and turned it into something fierce. Classic pincer. They've mapped these tunnels, from the last deployment, or the one before. They remember. The footsteps grew louder, closer, and with them, a sound I hadn't expected, a voice, clear and warm, and utterly, impossibly familiar. Silas? Jax Miller's voice, echoing down the subtunnel with the easy confidence of a boy asking a casual question in a school hallway. Friendly, unconcerned, as if we were between classes, and he'd just noticed me for the first time and decided, on a whim, to acknowledge my existence. Silas, hey, we've been looking for you, man. Man. Jax Miller had never called me anything but Ghost, or nothing at all, and now his voice, his simulated, algorithmically reconstructed, weaponized voice, was calling me man, and something in my chest responded to it like a plant turning toward a grow lamp, because this was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? This was the fantasy. The popular kid seeking me out, saying my name, noticing me. Don't listen, Cale hissed. It's reading your emotional profile, everything you respond to, recognition, acceptance, belonging, it'll use all of it. The more you engage, the more data it gathers, the more precisely it targets. Silas, come on, Lena's voice now. Softer, warmer. The voice of a girl who'd never once looked in my direction, speaking with the intimate concern of a close friend. We were worried about you. The pulse said you were in trouble. We came to help. We came to help. 4 words engineered to reach into the loneliest part of me and wrap around it like warm hands. Move, Cale said. Now. We moved. Not back, not forward. Sideways. Cale found a fissure in the tunnel wall that I would have walked past without seeing. A narrow gap between 2 slabs of petrified circuitry. Just wide enough to slide through if you turned sideways and exhaled. He went first. I followed. The rock pressed against my chest and back. The corrupted shimmer played across the surfaces around me, and in the shimmer I saw fragments, a face, a hand, a flickering frame of deleted video, showing someone I didn't know, laughing in a room I'd never seen. The image smeared and distorted by decades of degradation. We emerged into a parallel tunnel, wider, darker. The corruption was thinner here, fewer memory pools, fewer shimmering patches. But the ground was different, softer, yielding beneath my feet in a way that felt wrong. Watch your step, Cale said. This section is a sound. Ahead, the precise light footsteps, coming from both directions now. Compromised, Cale finished. He pulled the disruptor from his belt. Its blue-white tip crackled. They've boxed us. 2 golden figures emerged from the darkness ahead. Priya Sato and Oren Malik, walking in sync. Their school uniforms pristine. Their faces calm, smiling, radiating the warm gold light of the luster, like they'd brought the dome's manufactured sunrise with them into the bones of the earth. Up close, they were almost perfect, almost human. But the almost lived in the details at a slight lag in the blink rate, a smoothness to the skin that was one texture shy of real. And the eyes were right in colour and shape and expression, but they lacked the micro movements of living sight, the constant, unconscious dance of a human gaze processing a world it didn't fully understand. These eyes processed everything, understood everything, and that total comprehension made them flat, like polished glass. Silas, Priya's voice, gentle. You don't have to run. The pulse just wants to talk. The pulse wants to use me, I said. The pulse wants to save everyone. Oren, reasonable, patient, the voice of a responsible older student explaining something obvious to a younger kid. The dome is failing, Silas. If the system doesn't reboot, 10 million people lose everything. Their homes, their safety, their lives. You have the power to prevent that. All you have to do is come with us. And the 300 people down here? I asked. What happens to them? A pause, brief, almost imperceptible. The kind of pause that happens when a program encounters an input it has a response for, but needs a fraction of a second to select the optimal version. Sacrifices, Priya said, are sometimes necessary for the greater good. The word landed like a hammer on glass. Sacrifices, spoken with Priya Sato's gentle voice, in Priya Sato's concerned tone, with Priya Sato's compassionate expression. The algorithm had calculated that this message, delivered by this face in this manner, would resonate with my psychological profile. It had determined that I was the kind of person who would respond to the language of moral weight, of necessity, of greater goods. And it was right. Part of me, the part that had spent 15 years wanting to be inside the system, wanting to be valued, wanting to matter, heard the words sacrifices and thought, maybe 300 is an acceptable cost for 10 million. Maybe this is the math of the real world, and you just don't have the stomach for it. Silas, Cale said quietly. They're stalling. The other 4 are closing. I looked at Priya, at Oren, at their golden light and their flat eyes and their perfectly fitted uniforms. And I thought about Maren, standing on the platform in the assembly with her deep lines and her hard eyes telling 300 people that the thing hunting them wore familiar faces. I thought about Vex, heading into the lower tunnels with her stained fingers, ready to patch whatever the Sentinels broke. I thought about the woman with the copper wire hair, the children on the cable bridge, the scruffy dog, the terrible music, the stew that was too salty, and the bread that was tough, and the vine tea that tasted like burnt pennies. 300 people who weren't sacrifices, who were real, who had built a city from scraps in the dark and filled it with imperfect, unoptimized, stubbornly human life. No, I said. The Sentinels' smiles didn't change, but their posture did. A subtle shift, a redistribution of weight, a transition from approach to pursuit that happened in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Then we'll bring you back ourselves, Priya said. Her voice was the same, gentle, warm, concerned. The tone hadn't changed, only the intent behind it. They lunged, Cale moved. The disruptor swung in a wide arc, its blue-white tip leaving a trail of crackling light. It caught Oren across the chest. The construct staggered, its golden glow flickering, its form stuttering like a video feed, losing signal. Not destroyed, disrupted. Cale had bought us maybe 3 seconds. Run! He shouted. Deeper! The corruption thickens past the next junction. It'll slow them. I ran. Through the dark tunnel past the yielding ground that squelched beneath my feet like something between mud and circuitry, toward a distant shimmer that marked the next corrupted zone. Behind me, the sounds of Cale's disruptor, crack, 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 and the Sentinel's footsteps, barely interrupted, already recovering, already pursuing. The junction appeared, a fork, left, shimmering, right, dark. Cale's rule, take the corrupted path. I went left. The shimmer intensified. The ground became treacherous, glowing patches everywhere, some pulsing, some rippling. The corrupted data turning the floor into a minefield of broken memories. I jumped the first pool, sidestepped the second, vaulted over a ridge of petrified cable that sparked with residual charge, and then my foot sank, not into a memory pool, into something else, something that closed around my ankle like a fist, thick, viscous, glowing a sickly amber that was neither luster gold nor syntax green, but something in between. A corrupted data trap. Degraded code, pooled in a depression in the tunnel floor, with just enough active programming to recognize a digital signature and hold. My D-resolution field. The faint, always present hum of my null ability. The thing that made me invisible to the pulse, the thing that made me the root code, was a digital signature. And the trap had latched onto it like a hand grabbing a rope. I pulled. My foot didn't move. I pulled harder. The amber substance tightened. It was warm. Not the good warm, not the syntax warm. A feverish, wrong warm. And it was climbing. From my ankle to my shin. Slow, deliberate, like it was reading me. "Kale!" I shouted. No answer. The sounds of the disruptor had stopped. The tunnel behind me was dark and silent. Either Kale was fighting somewhere out of earshot, or... I didn't finish the thought. Couldn't. The amber climbed to my knee. It pulsed against my skin, and with each pulse I felt something. Not pain, but information. Data pushing against the boundary of my body, trying to get in. The corrupted code was attempting to interface with my D-resolution field. To read it, to map it, to copy it. If the trap copied my field, if it transmitted that data to the Sentinels, the pulse would have everything it needed. The complete code signature of the root code, captured and digitized and ready to be used for the reboot. They wouldn't need me at all. They'd just need the copy. And then the 300 people in Null City would become exactly what Priya's gentle voice had called them. Sacrifices. I reached for the field. The warmth, the I am here. Don't flare, Kale had said. The corrupted data will amplify the field. Turn a beam into a bomb. But the trap was climbing. My thigh now, pulsing, reading, copying. And in the tunnel behind me, footsteps. Light, precise, getting closer. "Silas?" Jax Miller's voice. Easy, warm, golden. "Don't worry, man. We've got you. You don't have to fight anymore." The amber reached my waist. My fingers trembled. The field burned in my chest like a sun behind a door, pressing against the frame, begging to be let out. I couldn't use it. Using it would destroy the tunnel. Kill me. Maybe kill Kale wherever he was. I couldn't not use it. The trap was seconds from copying the root code and handing the pulse everything it needed to end the syntax forever. The footsteps stopped. A golden glow appeared at the edge of my vision. Jax Miller's face, emerging from the dark, smiling the smile of a 9.9, the smile of someone who had never questioned whether the world would make room for him. "There you are, Ghost," he said softly. "Let's go home." The amber closed around my chest. The data pushed in. The field pushed out. And somewhere in the collision, somewhere in the space between the trap's red command and my body's refusal to be read, something cracked. Not the tunnel. Not me. Something deeper. Something in the code itself at the junction where corrupted data met D-resolution, met the desperate animal will of a 15-year-old boy who was not going to let this happen. The crack spread. The amber screamed, a high digital shriek, like a hard drive failing in slow motion. Its grip loosened. Not much, an inch. But an inch was enough to move. And I moved, wrenching my leg upward with everything I had, and the trap shattered. Not unwritten, not de-resolved, but broken, physically, mechanically, like ice cracking under a boot. I fell backward, hit the tunnel floor. The amber fragments dissolved around me, their glow fading to nothing. My leg was free, numb, tingling, but free. Jax's sentinel stood 3 meters away, still smiling, still golden, its flat, polished eyes fixed on me with total comprehension and zero understanding. Then a blue-white streak hit it from behind. The construct staggered, flickered. Kale emerged from a side passage I hadn't seen. Disruptor raised, breathing hard, blood on his forehead from a gash above his left eyebrow. "Can you walk?" he shouted. "I can run." "Then run." I ran, limping. The numbness in my leg was fading, replaced by a pins and needles burn that made every step feel like stepping on a live wire. Kale ran beside me, checking behind us every few seconds, the disruptor crackling in his grip. The Sentinels didn't follow, not immediately. The corrupted zone, the shattered trap, the degraded data, the environmental instability had done what Kale said it would. Slowed them. Bought us time. Not much, but some. We ran until the subtunnels opened into a wider passage, and the passage opened into a junction I recognised. The lower edge of Null City's deep levels, where the water tanks sat and the infrastructure hummed, and the petrified data cables formed archways like the ribs of a cathedral. Kale stopped, leaned against the wall, pressed his hand to the gash on his forehead, and looked at the blood on his fingers, with the detached curiosity of someone cataloguing damage for later repair. "The trap," I said, gasping. "It tried to copy my field, my de-resolution code. Did it succeed?" "I don't think so. I broke it before it finished, but I don't know how much it got." Kale was quiet, processing. Behind us, the subtunnels were silent. Above us, Null City waited. "Then we have a window," he said. "Small one. The Sentinels will regroup and come again, probably within hours, but right now, they're running on incomplete data, and the corrupted zone cost them processing power." He pushed off the wall, swayed slightly, steadied. "We need to get to the underground, the deep city. If there's anywhere in the syntax the Sentinels can't follow, it's there." "What's in the underground?" Kale looked at me, blood on his face. Amber goggles cracked. Disruptor dim, its charge nearly spent. 16 years old and carrying the weight of 300 lives and a world that the system had thrown away. "Everyone else the Pulse ever tried to delete," he said, "and they've been waiting a very long time for someone like you to fall through the floor." He walked. I followed. My foot ached where the trap had held it, a phantom burn that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. Behind us, deep in the subtunnels, a golden light flickered once in the dark, then went still.